Hello fiber friends, and today we will be learning the Tunisian crochet seed stitch. And much like any fiber arts, or most fiber arts, we will be starting with a slip knot where you will flip your yarn over itself to create a little X right there. And in this loop that you've just created, you will take your two fingers, put it behind and through that loop, grab onto your working yarn and pull that through, and that is your slip knot. Today I'm going to be using a 10mm Tunisian crochet hook, and this is just so that these stitches are easier to see. Please use a hook that is appropriate for your yarn and appropriate for the stitches that you will be making. So this, and then you will pull your working yarn that is connected to your big skein to tighten that up. Now this stitch is worked in multiples of 2, so no matter how many stitches you make, always make sure that it's an even number so that you can have that repeating pattern done evenly throughout instead of it coming out all wonky. So we will start today by making 10 stitches, so we will start with making 10 chains. And to do that, we are going to take our working yarn connected to the skein of yarn, grab that little yarn with the crook of your hook and pull it through that loop. And that will be your first chain. I'll show that again. Grab your yarn with the crook of your hook and pull it through that loop, and that is your second chain, and we will make 10 of these. And that is our 10 chains. Now if you have a 10mm regular crochet hook, making the chains with a smaller hook might be easier because maneuvering with such a large hook can be difficult. That way it'll be much faster instead of, again, maneuvering such a large hook. And then switch it out once you get here. You can like put your finger right there just to hold the shape of that. And pull it right out and then put your Tunisian crochet right in. That is the same size. So what we're going to do now, after we finish our chains, is we're going to turn it around and expose these little back bumps here. This is what we're going to be working into. Now I tend to use the tip of the hook right here to work into these back bumps. It makes things a lot easier than trying to push this part through because this is just so bulky and this is a little slimmer. So I like to have a good amount of hang on the hook to work into these little back bumps. It just looks a little prettier. You will skip this first back bump right here, the one that's closest to the hook. Skip that one, and we will be working in the second one from the hook. Right there, push it through, and then yarn over so that it catches your working yarn in that crook of your hook so you can pull it through that bump. I will show that again in the next bump right here. Put the tip of your hook through, push it through, yarn over your hook, grab it with that little crook, and then pull it through that back bump. And we're going to go all the way down to the last bump here. So we have finished our 10 stitches. Now just to make sure, always count. especially during this stage. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are all our 10 loops, 10 stitches that we will be working up in our project. Always make sure that you count at this stage, because this is easy. It's easy to miss a back bump if you are not working in such large stitches like I am. And if they're so tight together, or if your chain has twisted for whatever reason, right now would be a good time to count your stitches and to make sure that you have the right amount of stitches that you want for your project. Now we have the correct number, 10, that we are working with today. So now we will take this working yarn, grab it with our crook of the hook, and pull it through one loop. And then we will grab the yarn with the crook of our hook again and pull it through 2 loops at the same time. And you will repeat pulling through 2 loops until you only have 1 loop left on your hook. Most Tunisian crochet will start off this way, just like this. So if you feel like you want to do a project and you know this, you already have the base for a good majority of the stitches for Tunisian crochet. Now, this is going to be worked in multiples of Tunisian knit stitch and Tunisian purl stitch. I will leave a link in the description for those 2 stitches specifically if you want to see a full worked pattern with just those stitches. We do have videos up about that. Now, for this stitch, the seed stitch, we will, just like most Tunisian crochet, we will be skipping this first loop right here, because our first loop that's on our hook counts as our first stitch. So this first loop, first stitch, this loop, our first stitch. So we will skip this one and focus on the next loop that's right next to it, this right here. Now we will start with a Tunisian knit stitch, where once you find this loop, you will insert your hook in the middle of that stitch all the way to the back of your work, yarn over to catch it with the crook of your hook, and pull it through that loop. Now immediately the next stitch will be the Tunisian purl stitch, where you will bring your hook down in front of your yarn, or rather your hook down and make sure the yarn is in front of your hook. That's what I meant to say. So that yarn is in front of your hook. Now this next loop right here will definitely be worked differently. We're going to find the bar, the little bar right here, that's the closest to us, and that is what we were going to be inserting into. So instead of going all the way through, we're going to insert it to the side like this. Then we will take this working yarn, pull it down around behind your hook, and then yarn over so that you can catch the yarn with the crook of your hook and pull it through that loop. Now these are going to be repeated. Let me show them again. So the next stitch right here, you insert it into the next loop. So this loop right here, push it all the way through, yarn over, pull it through that loop, and then this one, you bring your hook behind your working yarn, insert it into the front bar of the next loop, right there, go down and around, and yarn over, and pull through that loop. You can technically see a small little pattern forming because you see that yarn going right around these loops and this one going into it. Now we are going to repeat this all the way to the end of the row. So our last stitch right here, it's gonna always look funky. It always looks a little funky, but if you look really closely, it is going to look similar to those loops that we have been working into. See this right here forms a loop with an extra bar on the outside. So you can see that loop right there, and then 2 bars on the outside. You're going to work into that stitch, that loop right there, and you want those 2 bars on the outside of your work. So you push it all the way through, you yarn over, and you pull that through. And that is how you will work your last stitch for every row. This is this row. Now what you're going to do is you are going to grab the yarn with the crook of your hook and pull through 1 loop. Grab it again with the crook of your hook and pull it through 2 loops at a time. And pull through 2 loops all the way until you only have 1 loop left on your hook. Alright, and that is how that row looks. Now I'm going to show you again the next row. It's going to be similar, but instead of starting with the knit stitch that we started in the last row, we're going to start with the purl stitch. So we are alternating. Because the knit stitch was done before, this row we are going to do the purl. So we're going to bring our yarn, we're going to skip this first. Hi baby, you whining? So we're going to bring our hook into behind our working yarn right here. So this first stitch we're going to skip because our first loop counts as our first stitch. And we're going to start with the Tunisian purl stitch, where you bring your hook behind your yarn. That next loop right there in the bar that's closest to you, you will insert your hook into that bar, bring your yarn down, bring it around, yarn over, and then pull that yarn through the crook of your hook through that loop. Now this next stitch you can obviously see was the purl stitch because of this bar that's running through it. We are going to be working a Tunisian knit stitch into this, where you make sure your yarn is in the back and not in the front. In that loop, insert it through that loop, yarn over, and then pull it through that loop. We're alternating the stitches. So if the stitch before was a knit stitch, you will be doing a purl stitch where you bring your hook in the back, insert through that front bar, bring your yarn around and around until you can pull it through that loop. And now you see this stitch was a purl stitch. We will now be working a Tunisian knit stitch into this. So now push it through in between that loop to the back, yarn over, and pull through. And we're going to repeat that all the way down. So we're now at our last stitch. I kind and it knocked my camera a little bit. We're now at our last stitch, and again, it always looks a little funky because of that extra bar that comes on the outside edge, but you always see a loop that forms plus that extra bar. Those 2 extra bars will always be on the outside, and you're going to push your hook through that, yarn over, if I can grab my working yarn. There we go. Pull it through those 2, and that is your last stitch. And it's going to be similar. You're going to pull through 1 and then pull through 2 loops all the way down to the end. Now I'm going to work a bit more of this stitch off camera just to show you how this pattern will look fully. Da, 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 da. So this is one of those stitches where, while you can see the pattern, probably using a tighter or smaller hook might be easier. Again, I used a 10mm, but that is mainly because of being able to see the stitches while they're being worked. You can see a little bit of the detailing. It is a really, really nice, pretty stitch where you can see the lines and how they alternate and almost make a kind of diamond shape. It is supposed to emulate the knit seed stitch in knitting. That is what it's supposed to emulate. And it is really nice. It's behaves really well. Like, it's really soft. It drapes really well, so it's really good for like clothing. It's really good for accessories if you want to make accessories out of it. If you want to make like a wall hang or any kind of home decoration, this is a really good stitch for that. I do hope that this was helpful for anyone, and happy crafting!